Hey friend, I'm Danielle Damrell, and I am so grateful that you're listening to the Created Worthy podcast. This show is all about honoring the life stories of women from different ages, beliefs, backgrounds, and experiences. Everyone's got a story, and instead of getting stuck in the trap of unworthiness, this is a safe place for stories to be shared. On this show, we chat about the transformative power of creative processing too, and how we can utilize our God-given creativity with intention to heal, grow, find joy, create simplicity in the midst of our chaotic lives. So pull up a seat at our table because we are all created worthy. Trigger warning, today we've got some sensitive content. At Created Worthy, we honor and protect the stories that are both shared and heard here. This episode contains discussions of sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including domestic violence, religious abuse, physical violence, sexual assault, eating disorders, and kidnapping. We understand that these topics may be difficult for some listeners, so we encourage you to care for your heart and your mind as you engage with this episode. If at any point you need to pause, step away, return at another time, or just skip this episode, we understand. Please feel free to do so. Our goal is always to create a safe and respectful space for stories to be shared with dignity and heard with compassion. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I'm joined by another worthy warrior, Allison Smith. Allison is an ethereal light that remains bright in devastating circumstances. She's faced cruelty, but in true Allison fashion, has turned that into fierce empathy that overrides destruction and instead turns it into compassion. Compassion for her community, for other survivors, the lost souls of the world, and perhaps most importantly, herself. She has used the experiences, good and bad, as an opportunity to connect. Through her art and through her words that drip with serenity, she leads with authenticity and vulnerability that allows others to feel safe enough to do the same. A recent trauma in her life had the strong possibility of breaking her beyond repair, but it's something beautiful to see the way that she's chosen to respond. She is driven to heal out loud. She believes that although hurt people, healing people heal people. She is overwhelmed by the grace that she's received in being spared and the support she's received from her community. That which could have killed her has instead given her a new appreciation for the human experience. She uses her art to speak, an outlet that has carried her and resonates as powerfully as her cadence. To know her is to know unspeakable resilience paired with unconditional love. She is an advocate for survivors and speaks from experience and deep understanding of mental health and trauma. She has a keen knowledge and big heart when it comes to speaking on complex PTSD, narcissistic abuse, and domestic violence survivors, addiction, self-harm, religious trauma, and queer adversity. She aims to spread awareness and empower others with similar stories, as well as prevent future victims. Her vision and whimsical approach to life is contagious, and her insight is valuable, and her warmth is inviting. Allison, thank you so much for joining me on the Created Worthy podcast. I can't wait for my listeners to hear even more about your real life story.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
It's, such an honor to have you here. You have gone through so much, and even recent. Right now, we are recording and it's in the beginning of December, but I actually just connected with you a few weeks ago after you shared an experience that happened in October. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we do that, Allison, can you take us back to the early chapters of your life, where you were born and raised, and what was the environment like that shaped your experiences growing up? We'd love for you to paint us a picture of those formative years.
I was born in Pennsylvania, but and a little bit of my early childhood's in Indiana, and then I moved to where I live currently, Rochester, New York. I think as a kid, I was like an old soul, but that came with like bad stuff too, because I would get so overly stressed out. Like I had the stress of a middle-aged like woman. I was so
Yes.
like I was very pensive as a child, like in head in the clouds all the time. Definitely ADHD, but I think it was more inattentive at that point. And in my adulthood, I'm like, I don't know. But I was perceived as shy a lot, but I think it was because I'm never the loudest person in the room. I don't like that. And I think a lot about what I say and since a kid. And some of that was driven by fear of rejection, fear of being embarrassed. But a lot of it too was just for like thoughtful person and like always have been aware of the energy I put out, even as a kid. I was bullied a lot. I have some severe religious trauma because I was in a private Christian school from
Mm.
the ages like middle of fourth grade to 10th grade. And so it was like 24 people in my class. And the teachers, especially the elementary school teachers, were just cruel. They made me feel so insignificant and not smart. I felt dumb all the time. And it was just because I learned in a different way. And I think in my own ways, if my gifts had been worked with, I excel in those things. I'm a communicator. I really love writing. I love art. Like there's things that I could have thrived doing and I did. But then I just always, no matter what, I was so scared of disappointing. And so it had me in a chokehold. And I think some of these older teachers that this is their life, they get a little power over a group of kids. But there were just a lot of moments that I was humiliated. And like I said, just called dumb. And in front of class, I was called out one time for being in special ed. I had the answers that day because I had gotten my homework finished. I was so excited because I never had the answers for math. My horrible math. And
Same.
so I was answering along with my other buddy that was in special ed. And we were just so excited to be able to contribute. Again, we felt unworthy. And so in the middle of class, don't know why, but the teacher came over because the student teacher was in charge of that class. And she came over and she stopped class and she said, "Why are you proud of being in special ed?" She, yeah,
Are you serious?
yeah. She said, "Stop." She was like, basically, stop trying to get attention. She was like, let other people answer. It's not something to be proud of that you're in special ed. And so my buddy James, we were fifth grade, and he puts his head under the desk, and I remember him just sobbing, and I was holding back tears because there was a lot of moments like that where it was just not an environment where I could grow at all. And so I think when I started to become a teenager, I played on my dumbness.
Mm.
Like I tried to make it into my personality. I think that I still struggle with that today. But I was like, if I'm considered ditzy and not smart, I'm gonna lean into it. And I
When really you just learn differently and you're creative. Yeah.
exactly. And it was such a contained environment, the dress code, everything. Every day I was getting the message that I'm not enough and left out. I was bullied a lot, like severely, and teachers didn't do anything to intervene. But I remember sixth grade, it was like I had the best teacher. He actually won several awards. I called him a few years ago and I just said, "Thank you. You're the first person in school that told me I was smart and that I was wasting that." And he did things differently. He would take us out and we'd go hunting for gnomes, or everything was creative. Some days we wouldn't even do math or science. Like, it was all hands-on. You would teach us what plants are edible and just take us on adventures, came up with the best, and creative writing was just I thrived in that. The prompts, everything. So I started believing I was smart, but again, my colleagues, my peers did not.
Right.
Well, because of my report cards. And it was so weird because when I went to public school, there's a lot of people that fail classes. Like, it's pretty common,
Yeah.
but nobody had ever failed a class. And so it was like that level of, so when I had D's and F's in certain classes, it was just like outcast. That was equated with popularity. And so, yeah, there's a lot of times I was called out for not knowing the answer or being spacing out or whatever it may be. And yeah, and then that was like my teenage years. And I discovered Flickr. It's like an online photography
Okay.
thing. And I made so many friends on there. Like, my photography blew up, and I had the whole that between that and Tumblr, I had found like my people. And I give a lot of credit to that. The internet can be
Yeah.
not very good for you sometimes, but there are times where it really helps you connect with community. That's what I'm experiencing with TikTok right now. And so I was chronically online.
Throughout high school. And were you still in the private Christian school at the time?
Yeah, when I was doing that and then going to public school, all I knew was fear. Like, I pictured high school as Degrassi
Yes.
and High School Musical. We were the Wildcats too. So public school, I had 60 people in my class, but the school was a circle. I for days, it was too many people. I was so overstimulated. And I think I'm on the spectrum as well, a little touch of autism, but I get overstimulated really easy too. And so that was hard for me growing up. And I do think a lot of that also has to do with the environment that I was brought up in and
Mm.
just not feeling heard. And so going to public school after not being popular at all, like being a pariah because of my grades, I went to public school and I was immediately put in honor society. I was like top of I all of my English exam, the Regents exam I got 100, which is almost impossible with the curve. I was like, wait, I am a little smart. It just depends on my art teacher. I was in the musical, I was the lead of the musical. I just had so much fun, and I was getting a taste of the real world.
Yeah.
Like, going into it, I was like, "People are gonna offer me drugs," and they did. I still didn't believe that I was liked, though. I think I'd always had this innate low self-esteem and low self-worth. That's the biggest thing that I personally have to keep up with and work with every day. It's like I gotta reprogram those things
For
because they're
sure.
negative core beliefs that were they're rooted so hard within me, so I'm still uprooting those. But
Yes.
I remember winning prom queen, and I wanted to go in the bathroom and cry because I thought it was a joke. Like,
Mm.
I that is how little I thought of myself, was that people were making fun of me all the time because I didn't feel beautiful, I didn't feel special. And then I was with a narcissist. So at 13, I forgot to mention, but at 13, I met my one and only boyfriend. So I met him at 13 and I was officially dating at 16, but we were dating all through that. And there was like right off the bat an obsession. And I really mistake that for love. That was during like Twilight era. And I was like, that's love. Somebody watching you while you sleep through the window. No. Like, all of these messages I was fed, I really thought that's what love looked like. And from the age of 14, we were talking about getting married. Like, it was so intense for, for middle schoolers. And everybody around us and our friends, our families got so attached to the idea of us because it's
Mm.
cute. You see kids
Yeah.
growing up together, middle school sweethearts. And he didn't start showing signs, obviously, as a kid until, but he had a few indicators that something was off. And I think narcissistic personality disorder is most often, if not always, a result of childhood trauma or just past
Mhm.
trauma. So I I had a lot of sympathy for him growing up, and so I didn't detect those things. And
And you were a child yourself who had gone through significant trauma and struggled with your worthiness. So, of course, you weren't going to detect those things. Like you were feeling seen and loved as a kid. Yeah.
it became my lifeline really quickly. And I just thought it was so perfect. Like I didn't think anyone could love me like that. And again, it's because I didn't feel lovable. I felt deeply unworthy. And as the years went by and he grew into this personality disorder and also is showing signs of around early adulthood is when there was just a shift that was so scary and so much pressure on me. I remember when he cheated on me for the first time, I was so broken because I truly believed that he didn't even see other girls because of that obsession piece of it.
Mhm.
I've been bamboozled by several other narcissists after. And I think that was that beginning, that idealization phase always got me because I mistook this intensity and obsession as love. And so I needed to work on that because it never lasted. There was nothing substantial over it. It was just like fireworks and
Right.
it wasn't anything deep rooted. And so I was just devastated as things got worse and worse. He cheated on me more. And I remember his parents and his family were terrible people. Like I've been getting into it a little bit on my TikTok and my story times, and I could go on forever and ever about just how messed up they are for the things that they saw and let happen to me and kept secret. And they come from a big, like, mega church family. He's
Mm.
loves one, and they're very powerful, and that was my community at the time.
Right.
And
So, even more religious trauma there. Yeah.
mhm, definitely. It was and there's a lot of friends that I met through that are still my friends today and
Mhm.
bond over it. But
Right.
it was, again, people so attached to us, but nobody knowing what was going on the inside. And that became a pattern until I was incapable of relating to anyone. But my head always felt like it was miles above me because of the dissociation, because he couldn't say what was really happening to me. And so when someone asks even a simple question, "How you doing? What did you do this weekend?" I can tell you that, or
Right.
else I'm gonna
I don't
tell
even remember. I was floating 20 feet above my head. Yeah.
it for the truth because if you heard, you would immediately try to get me out of that situation. Any sane person would. And the things that I saw and lived, and as the psychopathy got worse too, that was the worst. And I really got bad around like 18, 19, 20. We had moved to North Carolina for this big gig working for this NASCAR driver. And I've also been getting into that. It's such a long story, so I'll give cliff notes. But it was it was a big story.
Mhm.
I was into branding and marketing. I had never done anything about NASCAR. So it was just
Yeah.
a whole new ball game. But it was like he had encouraged me to quit college, and then this was the gig we got. And so it was my first real gig. I had an office. I was so excited. And then I come in for our first day after we had meetings and talked about the direction, and we had an interview with ESPN. And so I come into the office. He lived in the office, and it's like a weird situation.
Mhm.
He is on so many like, he is incoherent. He's in like psychosis, deep psychosis. And I knew that he had this obsession with Steve Jobs and like these big leader. Like, he thought he was really the next great mind of our generation. And I should have known that. I was a narcissist. I didn't know what a narcissist was,
Right.
but just very grandiose. And he, I guess, heard that Steve Jobs took LSD. So he took so much LSD that it drove him mad.
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, why? And he's telling me that I'm stepping on the universe, that there was helicopters coming. He had
Whoa.
so many drugs that he had bought with our moving money without my, no, I think he took them all because nothing was, so it was just awful for like a whole week. He wasn't sleeping and it was getting worse and worse. He was not eating. He was barely getting down water. He's paranoid. And the sketchy part of it was, and again, this is hard to get into. There's so many moving parts, but basically, that we were with people that were trying to get us to sign an NDA because they didn't want this. They had other sketchy business stuff that we would find out later. But so he went too long without, and then finally it was like, he's gonna die if he doesn't go to the hospital.
Mm.
And we took him there, and he immediately strips down naked, climbs a statue, is running around, shaking old ladies' faces on their deathbed. And the crazy thing is, and I'm give again, these are like cliff notes. This is an iota of the story.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of realizing that he was gone. Like, the person that I thought I knew was not there. And so it was this grieving process. And that was also the beginning of me realizing that I was stuck. Like, his parents were normalizing it already. I had been being groomed, and they fought to get him out of because he was mental hygiene arrested and in the psych ward. He needed to be, he was homicidal. He was trying to choke me every second. Like, he essayed me. A lot of horrible things happened.
Mhm.
And they knew, and they tried to get him out. They got him out of the mental hospital in 4 days. And they got it expunged off his record, all of this stuff. And they're his PR team, right? And so that would go on, and they would get calls of him saying that he's gonna kill me and then himself, like really dark stuff. And that was my life. I knew nothing else. And my
Mhm.
world got so small and
And you were
so
still so young.
I was I was a baby.
Mhm.
And it was the only relationship I had ever had. So everything, it was all I knew. And that's the crazy part. People would probably be like, why didn't you leave? That's insane. But since 13, I've grown up with this person, and I have the adults in the situation normalizing it, grooming me to be the perfect babysitter.
Mhm.
And that's what I was. I was babysitting a homicidal 3-year-old. And it was just the stories of trauma throughout that. My life was a living hell.
Mm.
And
What did
the,
your family say during all of this?
so he had moved me away, and his parents like swore me to secrecy.
Mm.
And I was so afraid of him. I began to really think that he had almost this omnipotent power. Like, that's the
Mhm.
level of brainwashing I was under. I actually had to go through cult deprogramming
Mm.
in my therapy after, because I was such brainwashed that I remember one time he tried to swerve and he was going 100 miles an hour on the highway to punish me. He had a DUI. and he's swerving and swerving. You do that often. So I have a lot of trauma around cars. And we got pulled over inevitably. He was trashed and I wasn't. I jumped in the seat for him without even thinking about it. I jumped in the driver's seat and I said, I took it and I went, and the cops knew. They saw all they knew, and they were like, please, honey, you just say the word and we'll help you. And I didn't believe it. I knew that, okay, what if you help me? When I have to go back to him, I'm gonna be that was really, the stakes were that high. My life was constantly in danger. I never rested. I don't remember even sleeping because it just was a time of constant alertness for the next problem and protecting him and becoming brainwashed by his parents and all of them. And so my family didn't know anything, really. They knew that he was sick, that mental hospital incident I told you, his parents and this business told me to tell my parents that he just had a mental breakdown because of stress, because he's working too hard. And that was also the narrative, was that he did so much for me and that he was special. He was a motion graphics designer and he had these gigs. Big names would be reaching out, but he could never complete them because he would go psychosis and I'd have to pick up the pieces. So my whole life was a secret. And that's what I mean by I was so dissociated when I was around people. For a whole year in Wisconsin, when I got married, I wasn't able to leave the house. And so
So you did end up marrying him?
which is, I hadn't seen, it was right after him when we got that job in North Carolina. And we had to flee from that, which is always what ended up happening. You have to flee from where we were. And he got this gig in Wisconsin and he was going to go check it out. And he wasn't there for most of the summer. And I was so happy, but I didn't connect that. I was so relieved and so in my power. It was like, I felt like everything was great. And so I'm not seeing him. I'm not connecting that it's because I'm away from my abuser. And then I have his parents and everybody, more religious trauma, pushing us to get married, saying there's no possible way we could live together, and I was a virgin until marriage, by the way. That's how much I was a God rocket. But yeah, we ended up getting married. I was 19 and
Wow.
it just never should have happened. But I was under the impression that he was better. He was doing well, he got this job. His parents were telling me he was better. And I would see him on the weekends and we'd go on a date. And so he proposed to me and it was just like, we had been together forever. I didn't know that there was another option, you know?
Hey there, friends. Are you ready to rise fully into your calling as a leader? I want to introduce you to Heart Soul Strength, a ministry dedicated to equipping leaders like you to serve with purpose, resilience, and joy, fully aligned with God's will for your life and the people you have specifically been called to lead. Whether you are leading a company from your home while you're raising small kids, or you're the leader of a Fortune 500 company, I want to personally invite you to our first immersive event, the Rise Leadership Conference, happening November 12th through 14th, 2025 in Waco, Texas, at the stunning Deerfield Estates, just 10 minutes from downtown Waco. This will be a weekend of worship, actionable workshops, connections, networking, and fellowship with women who share the same anointing on their lives, but maybe at different levels. It's designed to recharge your heart, soul, and strength, and to empower you to lead with clarity and confidence. Tickets are now available at the lowest donation rate they will ever be, but only through the end of this year. So whether you're able to join us in person or simply just want to support the mission of Heart Soul Strength, where we are called to equip leaders. Your donation makes a difference. And as a thank you, now through the end of the year, if you donate any amount, we will send you a little gift, a bookmark, a magnet, or a sticker to show you our gratitude. Visit heartsoulstrength.org to learn more, to donate, or to grab your ticket to rise. Let's rise into leadership the way that God intended, together. You are created worthy, and through Him, you have the heart, soul, and strength to make a kingdom impact in whatever role you're serving in. God's got you, and you got this.
So
Yeah.
it sounds
Wow. Allison, I am so sorry that you walked through that. And I know that it's not my place to apologize, but I do want to say, on behalf of me as a Christian, what you went through was not okay. It was not okay for you to go through that with your teachers. It was not okay for other students to bully you. It was not okay for you to feel unworthy and unlovable because you learned differently. Our stories, as you're talking, are we can talk about this more like off the air, but are so there's so many similarities. I also went to a Christian school. I was also in special ed. I graduated on a special track. I was expelled 3 times. I was in a narcissistic relationship, and there's just so many things. And throughout it all, I know that, as you said, or as we mentioned in your bio, hurt people hurt people, hurting people hurt people. And I believe that there's a lot of hurt people in the church, and that they do not represent the character of God Himself. And so, with that being said, I do not subscribe to any of the beliefs of the people that have hurt you, specifically your teachers, the students, and then your ex's family. How they treated you was the opposite of how you deserve to be treated. The reason I started this podcast called Created Worthy is because I believe by birth we are assigned our first inherent gift is that we are worthy,
that.
and that we are created by a creative God who uniquely designed us with special gifts and abilities. I believe that ADHD is a superpower. I believe that autism is a superpower. I believe, as we talked about before we started recording, like CPTSD and the things that cause that, those deep pains, these horrible traumas are actually what propel us to making the biggest impact. And I hate that cliche phrase of God gives His hardest battles to His strongest warriors. Yes, but let's stop using that, first of all. But I do believe that He knows how strong you are, and that I can see how strong you are, and that the people on TikTok who have been attracted to your story or have been like, the reason that your story has gone so viral was not on accident. And the reason I think I'm realizing in this moment why I felt called to reach out to you and say, there's so much more than what you've gone through in this public situation that you're sharing about. Like, I can see in you that, like, you are a woman of resilience, and that you carry an innate power to be able to impact and love other people from a place of true understanding. And that's rare. And that should have been honored in you as a child. That should have been honored in you as a teenager. And I'm so proud of you for stepping into this as an adult and saying, you know what, that was wrong. I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to call out my story. I'm going to say the things that need to be said. How I was treated when I was a young adult was not okay. And that's good. That's what needs to happen so that people in these situations can see that there is healing on the other side, and what the other side is even can be like. Like you said, your whole life was a secret. I
Yeah.
there are so many people right now who have no idea that there's another option, or they're
Mm.
so scared because leaving could mean even more hurt or pain or potentially death. Let's just call it what it is, especially when you're in domestic violence situations or you're in a relationship with a narcissist who's psychotic. It is really scary. And so it's in these sweet small moments of listening to a podcast or coming across a TikTok video that I believe God can use to inspire other people to seek other ways, right? Whether that's reaching out to you or reaching out to me or reaching out to somebody who's walked in similar shoes and then developing a plan. Like, I would really love at this point for you to share a little bit about how you got out of that, because you're not with him any longer,
Mm.
and you have obviously still gone through a lot since then, but that first step of courage of getting out of that specific relationship, what did that look like for you?
Well, I'll start off by saying I think it's hard to timeline, right? Especially
Yeah.
for you mind, but I'm trying to paint a picture of what I was working with
Mhm.
because I think, like we've talked about, I am not my trauma. Like it's not my personality, but in order to really understand and hopefully, if you've gone through similar, see yourself in it. Like you have to know a little bit about how it was. And I think that's the message that I want to convey is that you could be there was no hope for me, but I kept showing myself that I had it in me to make it to another day. And sometimes survival isn't bringing the ship to shore. Sometimes it's hanging on to a piece of wreckage and just making it. And that's what I was I'm gonna cry, I'm sorry. But
Tears are welcome. I'll cry with you, I promise.
that's what I was doing was just day by day, moment by moment. And the fact that I was able to keep my light when so many things and people tried to snuff it out, it was a miracle and not of my own power, but it did show me my power. And yeah, so it was getting out all of that's another thing that higher power, universe, whatever. It was all that because the situation surrounding it. So I was still very young. I think I was 23 when I left. So it was 2.5 rich. And it was just so bad towards the end that it was constant. There was just every day the amount of anxiety I would not wish that on my worst enemy. It was like my body was in terror 24/7. And so my nervous system, all of that was struggling. I was so weak. I was probably 100 pounds and soaking wet. Like I was not healthy. And I'm 5'9", by the way. So that's not
What?
great.
Yeah.
I look at pictures and I was dying. And it was just that's what stress does to you. It lives in the body and too, and that's an important thing to remember as you're healing. I love that book, The Body Keeps Score, because it really is. It reaches your innermost parts, and that includes your body. And so I that's the situation I was in. And so it was like me what happened that got me out. So we planned a trip to Buffalo. My parents had a suite out there my mom's living in temporarily, and they let us have the suite for my ex-husband's birthday and for my other friend's birthday. And me and my ex got there first, and he was not doing good. He was snorting Adderall and, like, doing God knows what. To this day, I find out stuff, and it's like, how did I not know? But he was just stimulants too, he just got even more aggressive and
Yeah.
terrible. And so he was abusing me and was getting really violent, like physically. And I was scared. I didn't know how it was going to go when everybody got there. So my little brother came and our friend. My little brother was too young to go out to the clubs, but those two were wasted. We're at this club. My husband is, what do you talk, grinding on a woman, looking me straight in the eye. That's the type of taunting and just no wonder I didn't have a
Yeah.
good self. And I'm watching this. I'm repulsed. I just want out of this aloud. It was just a gross place to be in anyway. And so I'm like, you guys, it's like 2:30. We need to go back. And so we walk out. Oh, my friend whose birthday it was, I think we got kicked out because of him actually, but whatever. We get out at the bar, we start walking, and then my ex tells my friend to flip off the Buffalo police. Like they were on the side of the road. And so he did. And immediately they got out and they were like, you want to see, they were not okay with that. Like they were pissed. And so I'm trying to do what I always do and just soothe the situation. I make natural like peacemaker. I let both sides be. I just want everybody to be okay. And so I was just like, officer, they clearly had way too much to drink. It's his birthday. Please, we're just a couple blocks down. Please allow me to get them home. And my ex rips me out of it because I was talking into the car, rips me away. And he says, "You're trying to get us in trouble." It's like blaming all this on me. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying to get us home. He was like pretending to film them. It was like so weird. We didn't do anything wrong. He's arresting us for wrongful things. And I was like, they're letting us go. And because of my ex, they arrested him. And they were like, you're to blame for your buddy going to jail. And then they looked at me while he was, I don't know, he was several feet away from me because I was like gone. Like I was trying to get to the hotel. I knew he was violent towards me. And so I knew something bad was going to happen. I wanted to get back to my brother. So I'm like several feet away and the cop stops and he says, "Who is that to you?" And I said, "Well, it's my husband." And he said, "Honey, you really need to think about that," and just left. Wish they would help. But
Right.
my ex sees that and comes over and is pushing me, shoving me, shaking me. We're in public, we're on the street, and he pushes me so hard. I'm trying to call my brother for backup.
Mhm.
And he takes my phone, he takes my wallet, he smashes and throws it in the middle of the road. Car's running over it. So I don't have my phone now. And so I'm running. I'm booking it because at this point he's telling me that I'm gonna die. I get into a taxi and I say, "Just go. I don't know that man." Unfortunately, he heard that. And so I was in even deeper trouble. He rips me out and I get away and I start running towards the hotel. And it was just the scariest. I went through that a lot, but this time it felt different. Like it felt like it's fine. He talked about, fantasized about killing me all the time out loud. And this was like, okay, this is it for me. But I'm banking on my brother, but also not because I was still in this world of I have to hide and I have to protect him.
Yeah.
So I get up, I run up, he's screaming and yelling, getting the hotel's attention. And I find out that, I run into the room, I said, "Keegan," and he's super like sleepy and he doesn't realize that he at first thinks it's just like we're fighting. And I'm trying to calm my ex down and just how I did that was saying, "It is all my fault. You're right. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I had to just shit on myself. And so I'm trying to do that. And then I'm telling him to be quiet because twice people were coming to the door to see what was going on. And so I go in the kitchen. I'm just like, "I promise you, like, I'll do better." And he said, "It's your fault." And then he starts to whisper. And it was like true evil and looks at me like a lot of people describe narcissists getting those black eyes. Almost
Mhm.
like a predator. They just get these dark pupils. And he said, "It's time. You're going to die tonight." you're gonna die tonight, like laughing. And then he lunges at me, puts my head in the microwave, and just starts strangling me. And I just remember thinking, this is it. I didn't even fight back then. I, which is so crazy to me. I just accepted it. And I'll never understand that. But then I hear my brother, oh no, you don't. And he rips him off. And then he says, run, Allison. And he's now punching my brother. And I'm freaking out. I run to the bathroom, but I don't have my phone to call for help. And so I'm freaking out. And then my ex is saying, oh, she's going to go in there and cut herself. She's going to go in there and cut herself because I had self harmed before. And I mentioned I suffered with that and it was internalized rage. But that was obviously not my plan. And the funny thing is, he never acknowledged my self harm ever before that moment. And it was like he knew the whole time, but he only chose to bring it up when it was
To
true.
weaponize it.
Mhm. To make me seem crazy, unreliable. And I know that's what he fed other people. Oh, she's unstable, whatever. And so I'm trying to get my brother's safety. And then I put myself in the way and I say, hey, again, it's all my fault. I'll do anything. Let me just tuck you into bed. Let's just go to bed. You can do anything you want to me. I was just doing it, and it was like a script. That's what I knew to say to work. And my brother looked at me with the most fear in his eyes, and he went for help. He didn't have his contacts in, but later on, he would go on to say, Allison, the scariest part wasn't even that he tried to kill you. It was when I realized how used to that you are. And he said, it was just like it was normal to you. And he said, I saw that. And in that moment, I knew that you've been suffering. And it was so much grieving from my family because they knew things were off, but they never could put a finger on it. And everybody thought he loved me so much. So my brother goes and gets help. My dad comes to the door and knocks on the door. And I remember this moment so clearly. I go to open the door and I'm thinking an excuse in my head. How am I going to make this right? How am I going to protect my ex? And then I say, no, I'm going to let whatever happens happen, which was my first time, like saying, like trying to take some power back. And my dad comes into the room. My ex just starts laughing hysterically. He says, do you know how crazy your daughter is? She's a drunk. She's a this, that, and the other thing. And my dad, he took everything in him to be calm because he knew how brainwashed I was and I was at risk of being taken away. So he had to be very careful. And they were conferring with another, like a therapist, a trauma therapist that would go on to save my life, diagnosed me with PTSD. And so my dad comes in and he says, don't laugh at it. This isn't funny. You tried to kill my daughter. He said, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to take you, get friend out of jail. I'm taking you. And then he whispered, he gave me his keys and he had said to the front desk, no one takes that orange car leaves when I say it can't. So he was just trying to make sure that there was no way that he tried to break free and get me. And so then he says, oh, and the condition is she's not sleeping at your place tonight. She's going to sleep with us and we're going to figure out a solution, but you're going to therapy. And you would think my ex would like take that as, oh, I got to save some kind of face and at least pay for he didn't even pay for the therapy. Had my dad. And so we go to therapy, and this was just, I lucked out. It wasn't luck. It was definitely divine that my therapist knew exactly, like this was his area of expertise. So I go in there, we're told that we've got to prepare, kind of like what I'm doing now, like a timeline of trauma and just events. And I'm writing mine. He said, this isn't about you. Why do you make everything about you? I'm like, this is couples therapy, but he told me to do it. This is about me and what I've been through. And hated he didn't so we go in there and I'm like, this guy's just gonna buy all of what he's saying and it's gonna make it worse. There's gonna be another person that feeds his ego because from the beginning, my therapist is just very, you're special. I'm gonna hook you up with this other videographer, and I could see you're super talented. Just
Yeah.
address him like that because that's how you get them on the line.
That's how you talk to narcissists
Yeah.
to get them to commit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very sticky thing with narcissists. And it ended up the therapist is going to prioritize the victim. And so luckily that happened. But so I go in there and I'm just slumped over. Every time I'm asked a question, I start to speak. He talks over me and he says, see, it's her fault. It's a just down, well, like talking down to me in front of this person and believing that this guy is on his page. And he gets finally to the part where he had just tried to strangle me. And he just cuts it off and goes to the bathroom. So he was just going to leave that out, I guess. And the therapist looked at me and he said, I know everything that's happening. This next session, I'm going to book you both individuals. So I ended up going. And the way that he said, you have PTSD, he said, what? I was this close to intervening in that session because that was abuse right in front of me. I explained lightly what he was, and that was my introduction to MPD and psychosis and all of that. And he says, you're the one with complex PTSD, because I always diagnosed my ex with that because of his trauma and projecting my empathy. And my therapist over time, and Big Little Lies. I don't know if you've seen that, but that
I
was,
have, but it's been a minute.
yeah, it's an oldie. This was back in 2017.
Yeah.
But it was on at that time, and that I give so much credit to that show because it was what happened to me. It's same but different, right? Like our story is same but different because these experiences are not uncommon. And so, unfortunately. And so I was watching that, and the therapist in that was telling Nicole Kidman, okay, you need to prepare for what happens. It just doesn't, just baby steps and get a place to own, save money, all of these things. And so I started putting money away, not even thinking about it. It was like survival in a different way. And my therapist was slowly walking me through it as my husband is getting more and more aggressive each day and now going into another bout of psychosis.
Mhm.
So towards the end, I'm staying out until 4 in the morning, but he's so in psychosis that he doesn't realize it, but I don't want to be home. And so the end of the story, and this is the Exodus, he must have said something so scary, told his plans to kill me, which had happened a few times with his parents. But whatever he said to his parents, they drove 14 hours in the middle of the night to come. And they didn't feel the need to tell me that I was in danger. They never did. Didn't care. But they did care about him being put away for life. So they came in the middle of the night. And I walk into the house and I'm like, where is he? It's completely pitch black. It was like a horror movie. I walk up the stairs and I'm like, yo, you in here? And that's not what I said, but I can't say his name. And
No, you've done such a great job of keeping that out. So yo it away.
throw it away. I love it. Well, I go in and then I finally find the light and I turn it on and he's on the couch like this. And I thought that he was like overdosed or dead. He looked terrifying. The bags under his eyes. I thought he was dead.
Mhm.
But when I got closer, I realized that he had painted his face with my makeup, which is Sephora, bro. That is expensive.
Hopefully you got that back.
Yeah. He has every nail a different color. He looks so freaky. I don't even know. I wish I could explain how scared I was. I was just like, what the one time Side note, he had because he would look in the mirror for hours and hours. He thought that his side of his face was a different person. It was a reoccurring thing. One time, he shaved half of his head because it was on that side, and he told me to mail it to Kendrick Lamar because it was a sacrifice for Kendrick Lamar. Shout out.
I assume you didn't do that, so you're welcome, Kendrick Lamar.
Hey, friends. So we are actually going to pause right here. I know that there is so much to process in part 1 of Allison's story. So we're going to break it up. Part 2 is actually going to air on Thursday this week. So we're going to have a bonus episode on Thursday with the rest of her story. Make sure to come back and join us. She is actually going to be sharing the story that went viral on TikTok that happened just a couple of months ago. You guys, what happened was wild. And I'm going to give you a little teaser. It all happened over asking for 1 dime, 10 cents. 10 cents for what almost cost her life. Come back on Thursday and we'll be talking through Allison's story, part 2. See you there. Thanks for listening and tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. I hope that today's show resonated with you, and if it did, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show and it expands the reach of the stories and concepts that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. And if you're on social media, come hang out with me. You can find the Created Worthy podcast on both Instagram and Facebook, or come follow along with my personal IG page where I just share more about the real, sometimes messy life of your fellow worthy warrior. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, we are all created worthy.